And welcome to the Newsmaker show. On this half hour, it's going to be Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Assemblyman, thank you for calling in.
Thank you, Brian. It's good to be with you again. How are you?
Doing well, and yourself?
Not too bad, given the circumstances, but doing well. Thank you.
Assemblyman Palmesano, we reported yesterday on the death of longtime Allegheny County Republican Chairman Bill Haney, who you knew.
Yes, Bill Haney was just a wonderful, wonderful man. He's certainly a stalwart in Republican politics in Allegheny County. I know he was a chairman of the GOP for over 20 years, but he was also involved with many of our local officials throughout the region. He worked for Governor Pataki, he worked for Amo, Senator McGee, Senator Young. I know he did some work for Joe Giglio. He just really involved and engaged in politics, but just also, other part of that Bill was very much involved with was he was a real true historian. He was very instrumental, and he helped create Local History Week in Allegheny County. And we reached out to him in Steuben County a couple years ago. I remember when Amo wanted to try to start something in Steuben County. I remember him sending a note to me, Amo sending a note to me, asking me, "Can we do something like this in Steuben County?" And Amo never asked me for anything, but when he asked, you had to try to make something happen. So
sure,
we reached out to Bill Haney, who was really gracious with his time and worked with our historians in Steuben County, and we started a Steuben County Local History Week in Steuben County. This year was our second year that it happened, but it really happened with Bill's help and direction and guidance. And then obviously our local historians took off with that. So he's just a great guy, a great person, just a true gentleman. An educator, just really involved, just a great man. He's going to be missed. I used to try to meet with him a few times a year for lunch. At one point, we were trying to meet once a month, but then it got a little more difficult. But we were always meeting several times throughout the year to have a lunch over in Hornell. We'd meet over there and just to talk and catch up. And he'd always bring me little bits of nostalgia and history, things about Amo, things about Governor Pataki, things he was involved with. Just a really, really good man. He was very engaged with the Boxing Hall of Fame and being engaged in some of the work they did, especially over in Allegheny County on that. Just a great person, great leader, great man, and certainly, my thoughts and prayers go out to his wife Eva and their family. He's going to be missed by so many people. I know Joe Giglio was really close with him. Kathy Young was close with him, and he's going to be missed tremendously. But just a true gentleman. So those of us who know Bill, especially from Allegheny County way, we lost a true gentleman and a true giant, and he will be missed for sure. Thank you for letting me talk about him, Brian. I appreciate that.
Oh, sure. We're speaking with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Yeah, Bill Haney used to be on the Newsmaker show with Kevin Doran, and everyone speaks so highly of him. Assemblyman Palmesano, what's the latest going on with the Assembly Republicans as far as trying to get the economy going again?
Yeah, Brian, thank you for asking. Our Assembly Republican Conference has been really engaged over the past couple weeks with actions we've taken. It started probably about a couple weeks ago. Our conference wrote a letter to President Trump and the federal administration and to our members of Congress, Senator Schumer, to take action to help our farmers, to make sure the federal assistance that was coming through that our farmers were eligible for and be able to be directed to get assistance. Along with that, some of the economic, phased assistance programs that are coming through, like the New York, like the CARES Act and things of that nature, making sure our farmers were eligible for the economic injury loans and, making sure the feds were taking action. And we've been glad to see that the feds have released. I know we talked to Congressman Reed about this, and the feds and President Trump have responded. They are taking action to help our farmers. We also, in addition to that, Brian, wrote a letter and offered suggestions to Governor Cuomo and our state leaders as well, state legislative leaders as well, to, again, focus on our farmers and our agricultural community as well, who have been devastated by this as well. And we know 98% of the farms in New York State are family-owned farms, and we know we've lost over 20% of our dairy farms in the last 5 years. we made some significant recommendations in the approach to the state. It's not always about money. Sometimes it's regulatory things that we can do because, obviously the state has our fiscal situations. But, for example, we should suspend that, in my opinion, which was a disastrous Farm Labor Act, which, required more mandates and regulations on our farmers and our agriculture industry. We should suspend that for 1 year before even considering it and letting that go into effect so we can bring some immediate relief to our farmers. We could look at some of the other regulatory requirements regarding DMV requirements on ag vehicles. We could look to suspend the highway use tax and some of the hauling transport fees for agricultural vehicles that transport agricultural products for our industry. That would help our agriculture industry for sure. Also, Brian, we've also released we call it like a jumpstart plan relative to providing economic assistance and help to our with recommendations both at the state and federal level. When we know through surveys that 98% of our small businesses have been affected negatively by this, we know our small businesses are being crushed by this shutdown that's been going on. Lost jobs, lost revenue, lost investment. And we know that the workforce is being hurt, and we know our small businesses particularly are being crushed, and we want to make sure that we're looking at immediate actions we contend, whether it's regulatory, but also redirecting funds, repurposing funds like for Startup New York or, like the film tax credit for Hollywood in the entertainment industry with a $420 million tax credit. Why are we providing a $420 million tax credit for Hollywood in the entertainment industry when that money can be better repurposed for our small businesses? And that's the key. It's got to be focused on small businesses. I've talked to a number of small business owners who are struggling, and here there's assistance going to some of these bigger corporations that might be franchise corporations, and we need to make sure that the assistance is getting to our small businesses, our mom and pop, people who invest time and time, year after year. We can look to extend and waive state regulations that are going on to help benefit these individuals and make sure the federal monies are being distributed to the local small businesses who to qualify to do more like 0% interest rate loans and things of that nature. That's what we need to do. We need to make sure we're putting the attention on our small business community. So we released some suggestions on how to do that, a whole host of areas we can do, and I think that's just a great thing that we need to be pushing for. Again, it talks about repurposing capitalized programs and relief for our small businesses, directing unallocated settlement money towards our small businesses, and just really making sure our attention is going to our small business community. Those are some of the things we're looking at doing because we need to make sure, whether it's our agriculture industry or our small business community, when our small businesses in New York State employ over 50% of the workforce, we need to make sure there's an attention and focus on that. And the same thing like when we're talking about our agriculture industry, I can't stress that again, 98% of the farms in New York State are family-owned farms. They're already struggling, and these small businesses were struggling before all this happened, and now we need to make sure that we're helping to provide the assistance and provide them with the relief that can help them survive and grow, especially when we look to restart and reopen our economy. These are the vital and crux and the backbone of our neighborhoods back home, our small communities. We should really be focusing on Main Street. That's why I always talk about this $420 million tax credit for the Hollywood industry and entertainment industry. We should be focusing on the business on Main Street. We shouldn't be focused on the business on Hollywood Drive or Rodeo Drive. Main Street businesses, small businesses. Why are we subsidizing programs like on Saturday Night Live, who have benefited from this film tax credit in the past? I mean, it's called Live from New York, not Live from Saskatchewan, not Live from Providence, not Live from Miami. It's Live from New York. We don't need to be subsidizing the entertainment industry. Those tax dollars, those tax credits, we better reuse to repurpose to our small businesses who are really struggling and being crushed right now, who are really just hanging on to survive and trying to figure out how they're going to meet their payroll, how they're going to pay their rent payment or property tax bill. We need to be focused and really energized on providing assistance to our small business community, and that's why I think it's important that the Washington re-up this the small business program, the Paycheck Protection Program, and things of that nature that they're trying to come to an agreement on. we need to because that money that ran out of money. We need to make sure that that money and that funds are being directed to the small businesses who need it. Again, as I mentioned before, we know that they're negatively being impacted, and we need to engage our small business organizations with this. When 50% of our workforce is employed by our small businesses, and when we have over 1 million people who will file for unemployment in New York State, it's getting more and more difficult for our families and our small businesses. So there needs to be a focus as we're providing the assistance, the unemployment assistance, to our families and individuals who are at work. We need to make sure we're doing what we can to help our small business community so they can keep employees hired and then bring them back when things turn around. But from the conversations I've had with small business owners and others, they're scared. They're concerned. What's going to happen next? And we really need to be looking at that moving forward. As far as I know, the governor keeps talking about coordinating with downstate, the downstate governors, Connecticut, New Jersey, as far as a reopening plan. But we need to also be looking at certainly our upstate area. Because we're not New York City, so we need to be looking at a plan for upstate to reopen. There's big differences between the two.
Speaking with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano, Assemblyman, yesterday during the governor's briefing, the governor's secretary, Melissa DeRosa, made a statement about the state unemployment department, the state labor department, I should say. Melissa DeRosa said that the state labor department hired last week over 3,000 new workers to help get those unemployment forms looked at. Your office, I'm sure, has been swamped getting calls about this problem. With the 3,000 new workers at the state labor department, do you get a sense that things are better, Assemblyman?
Well, Brian, it's always been a struggle. I mean, we're still hearing concerns from people in the community, and I would definitely encourage anyone out there who's trying to work with unemployment and is not getting an answer to reach out to our office or Marjorie Burns or Senator O'Mara or Joe Giglio, whoever your rep is. Any of us can work and help. Our staffs are spending a great deal of time trying to whittle through the challenges of this system. It's certainly unprecedented. And no fault of the Department of Labor. This system has never been set up to handle this type of volume, this type of situation. So I know they're trying to incorporate and try to change along the way to make modifications. So hopefully some of the changes they are doing are working. But please, if you're having a problem, if you're not getting responded to, I guess the way the system was set up or has been changed is like now when you go in and file, if there's questions, they're supposed to get back in touch with you within 72 hours. If you're not getting contacted, please let us know. But if you need help, let us know. We work with hand-in-hand with the Department of Labor through our liaisons to try to get information to them to make sure these claims are getting processed. So we hear they are, but I hope they are. But on the ground, there's still definitely problems and challenges our staff are having as far as making sure this is getting done for the people who need this assistance, because we've known situations where some people have applied and didn't get contact back. It's been 2-3 weeks, and so we need to make sure. I urge people to please be in contact with our office if there's delays in getting it, if you're not getting it, if we have worked with you, if you do get the help, let us know so we can kind of check that off and make sure we're continuing to focus on those who are not getting the assistance, who have not had it follow through and filed on. So yeah, Brian, it's been an ongoing challenge since this started. But like I said, I believe it's over 1.2 million applications and have been filed. If I could be incorrect, but at least that was one of the last numbers I saw. That's quite a burden on the system. So I know they've hired more people to work with it. They've tried to make some technological changes to improve the system. I'm hopeful that's working, but from talking to my staff, we still have challenges out there. They're still working tirelessly each and every day. Even on the weekends, talking to people and getting messages and getting back to people who are having problems getting their unemployment case just entered and making sure it's confirmed it's entered for processing. So please, again, if anyone out there is having challenges with that, who are unemployed, who haven't had their claim assured that it's filed or need to be verified, let us know. Let Marjorie Burns know. Let Senator O'Mara know, or Joe Giglio in our region. That would be where it'd be our jobs, because it's the State Department of Labor to check into that. So we encourage people to do that. But it's definitely a frustrating system, and I feel terrible for the people who've been struggling with that. But we're here to help wherever we can. We can't control it, but we're doing everything we can to get the information in front of the Department of Labor, urging them to act quickly. These individuals have been waiting a long time. Information isn't getting to wherever it needs to be, and they're not getting the follow-up calls and follow-up contact that they need to finish and completing their application. So, again, and I know I'm repeating myself, but it's just important that anyone out there who is having a problem with the Department of Labor, if they're not getting their case confirmed, if they're not getting a call back, let our office know. We can do an legislative inquiry, and try to do follow-up on that. And that's what my staff in our offices have been spending a great deal of time in over the past month with this crisis that we're facing and the number of people that are out of work. So we're here to help. We're working together on this, and we continue to work together, even with Congressman Reed. There's a lot of coordination going on between our offices on a number of things, and we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, and the Assemblyman's not just talking there. That's not just a talking point. When he says he'll help, he will. I was talking with Congressman Tom Reed on the air on Saturday, and Assemblyman Palmesano heard the show, and he said, the Assemblyman said, heard you mention that there was somebody who was having a problem getting through to the Labor Department, that somebody had called you. Give me that guy's number, and I did. With the guy's permission, and he was only too happy to speak with Assemblyman Palmesano. So, speaking with Assemblyman Palmesano here on the Newsmaker show, just got an email from Governor Cuomo's office. It says that Governor Cuomo is going to be holding a briefing in Buffalo, and then later today at 10:45 for his COVID-19 daily briefing, 10:45 in Buffalo, and then at 3 o'clock at the White House. The briefing in Buffalo will be broadcast online. I'm wondering, Assemblyman, why do you think, is there any reason in particular that the governor's going to Buffalo?
I don't know, Brian. I'm not 100% sure. I know the other day he went down to Long Island. I believe it was to North Shore Hospital, one of the largest healthcare centers and operations in the state. So I know he went down there to talk about some of the things they're doing down there and some of the plans of action. I would imagine maybe Buffalo, because, it's an upstate area. I don't know what's going on there, what he's going to announce, but the governor certainly has done these briefings on a daily basis to try to keep people informed on what's going on, where things are, and where we are on the curve, and it looks like we're on a downward trajectory from that perspective. And I did read that he was going to the Washington, D.C. today to meet with President Trump, so we'll see how that goes, and hopefully they can continue to work together, and hopefully we can keep the politics out of it. We need to make sure we're working together, all of us, because, certainly the state needs federal assistance, and we need to be a partner on this, and we need to make sure, and not just there's assistance for our states, but also assistance for our local governments. Our local governments are getting crushed. Our counties with lost property tax revenue and everything else. We need to make sure there's assistance, and I know Congressman Reed has been talking about that we need to make whatever type of plan comes out of Washington next needs to provide direct assistance to our local governments, and so they can use those funds to address their financial needs, just like any money that comes to the state. We want to make sure that money stays in the local government's hands. There's at times, unfortunately, where the administration and governor have basically tried to take those funds or try to get their hands on the local funds to use for state purposes, and we can't have that. There needs to be direct assistance. It needs to be, just as the governor says that we need to be a partnership with the federal government, yes, but it also needs to be a partnership from the state government down to the local governments, and we need to work hand in hand. We can't put this whole burden on their backs. They're struggling enough as there is. We need to do everything we can to work together and not put that challenge and that burden right on our local governments and the local property taxpayers, because that's not going to be helpful to anybody.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Stay with us.
The Ryan Agencies, your local, independent insurance agencies. The Ryan Agency employs 15 of your friends and neighbors. They live, shop, and support our community. When you buy insurance from the Ryan Agency, you support local families. Contact the Ryan Agencies today, your local source for all things insurance.
Insurance protection you can rely on. The Ryan Agency.
Hungry for something different? Go to this website, getlocaltakeout.com, for a list of restaurants still offering takeout in our area. Getlocaltakeout.com is brought to you in support of local restaurants by the Ryan Agencies and mysticmedia.com.
It's the Newsmaker Show on live with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Assemblyman, you have a media call with Congressman Tom Reed at 10 this morning. It'll be Congressman Reed and other legislators. What's that going to be about?
Well, I don't want to speak for Congressman Reed, but I think really the focus of it is really to kind of talk about, what we're going to do to reopen our economy, having a plan in place. And I know Congressman Reed and their Problem Solvers Caucus released a plan recently about it's a reopening and recovery back to work checklist. And when you go through some of the highlights of the federal, and it's a Problem Solvers Caucus, is a bipartisan group, Republicans and Democrats. I believe there's 50 members, 25 Republicans, 25 Democrats who have been trying to work together to discuss what they need to do to unite to come together on an economic plan moving forward. And, when you look through the checklist, obviously the first and foremost is a public health checklist, ideas and things that they need to be doing to put in place so we can reopen and restart our economy, an economic recovery checklist, and talking about supply chains and things we can do to ensure regulatory fixes and again, direct aid investments to our states, counties, and towns. Just a whole host of agriculture relief, a whole host of programs that, that the Problem Solvers Caucus under Tom Reed's co-chair, that he co-chairs with his colleague from New Jersey. I think his name is Josh Katzmeyer, where he's been up here to our area, and Tom's went down to New Jersey talking. And I think along with that line of credit, and I think that's kind of where we're getting at, that, we're trying to look at a way and a strategy to reopen. And we, our economy, this is on a downturn, hopefully it continues to stay on a downturn. And as I mentioned too, from a state perspective, the governor has talked a lot about working with our downstate colleagues in Connecticut and New Jersey, Vermont, about a restart and a reopening, and that's great to coordinate that, especially with the downstate metropolitan area. I get that, but there's more to the state than just downstate, and we need to also be focusing on our upstate with a plan. And listen, like I said over and over, I've said over and over again, we're all eager to restart our economy, get back to work, and return to normal life. And we have to continue to deal with this coronavirus public health crisis, but we also really have to be mindful of the economic crisis and the financial hardships that's facing our families, our small businesses, our farmers, our manufacturers, particularly here in upstate New York. And after all, they were all struggling before this crisis. So we need, I think, from a perspective, we need to begin work on a measured regional approach to reopening our economy and getting back to work, while also continuing to incorporate into the workplace and into our daily lives the effective recommendations of public health experts like social distancing and other actions that have been working and helped to flatten the curve and get us on a downturn. We must continue to be vigilant and continue to take actions to protect the public from the virus, especially our most vulnerable. We see what's going on in our nursing homes all around the country, especially in our region as well. But it's important that what we look to do, Brian, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, I think you're going to continue to hear, is that we need a balanced and not a one-size-fits-all approach to reopening the state.
On that, Assemblyman Palmesano, I wanted to ask you, and we're down to the last 3 minutes now. There are two opposing views on reopening the economy. One, wait till there's a vaccine to open things up again, and two, open up everywhere, every place right now. It doesn't matter how many people are sick. Wondering, where do you stand on this issue?
Well, I don't think it could be either one. I don't think either one of them on their own is right. We can't wait. A vaccine is 12 months to 18 months away. We can't wait that long to reopen our economy, because otherwise people are going to die, because if they can't feed their families, if they can't work, this is not going to work. It can't continue to be just government assistance all the way through this process. And also we can't just say open up tomorrow. We need a plan to open up tomorrow. We need to look at, and that's what I was saying, from the perspective of from the upstate area, we need to be measured. We can incorporate these public health recommendations about social distancing, wearing masks. Even the essential businesses that are out there are incorporating these, who are working right now, are incorporating these health recommendations into their operations, and we should be taking some of those approaches. So I think we need to make sure, and that's what I said over and over again. Listen, the southern tier and the Finger Lakes is not New York City. Our upstate rural communities with lower infection rates should be able to loosen our restrictions before the highly infected regions like New York City. So there has to be a balance to this, Brian, and we can do this with a balance. even like the Problem Solvers checklist has a list of public health checklists and ideas that need to be put in place, and an economic checklist. It's not one or the other. They both have to work hand in hand. We have to make sure we're working this, because we don't want to get to a situation where we are just ignorant and not take any action and take any precautions and then have it respike and redevelop. That's the one thing we don't want to have happen. So we have to have precautions in place, but that doesn't mean we can't work on a balanced approach and incorporate it and working to get our economy and people back to work. But that's why we need a plan. There's no plan. We just can't just say, hey, we're going to open up Friday, everyone. And it takes time to reopen that type. So we need to make sure we're putting the proper precautions in place. We can do this at the same time while reopening the economy, but it needs to be a plan in place to do that. And that's why I've said, and others are saying, we can't just be dependent on New York City. We're not going to. New York City is a ways away from that situation, because their infection rates and the density of their population is tremendous. It's not like upstate New York. Certainly we have some hot spots, and we have to take that in consideration. We have to be able to act quickly if there's a problem or a breakout, so we can do it because we take the education we learn from this and incorporate that. But it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach to reopening. Again, Southern Tier and Finger Lakes is not New York City. Our upstate rural communities with lower infection rates should be able to loosen restrictions for the highly infected regions, but we have to work together. We have to take into account the effective recommendations from our public health experts. Like I said, low social distancing and other, but it has to be a balanced approach. And we have to remember, it's not just a health crisis we're having. We have an economic crisis and financial hardship, so we have to work together. It can't be one or the other. It has to be balanced, and we have to incorporate both of these things in.
Assemblyman, with that, we do have to leave it. I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brian.
The virus spread.